Hi, this is Bruce Rawles, and today I'm talking again with Susan Dugan. And today's topic is from the clarification of terms, the second section called the ego, the miracle. And as I was just talking to Susan before we started this recording, this seems like a particularly Zen portion of A Course in Miracles. Unlike some mystical teachings where it seems to the intent is to obscure or to hide, this seems like it just puts it wide out in the open with dazzling clarity and illumination, and the contrast between the two thought systems that A Course in Miracles reminds us are the only two choices that we have as alleged prisoners of the world of the dreams, of the ego's dream. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway,
and
thank you for suggesting this, and thanks
yeah,
for talking with me again. Yeah.
we've been doing we're almost to the end of the manual in my Tuesday night class that I teach, and now which has been online since March, but it originated here in Denver. But so the ending of the manual is the clarification of terms, which is just some. It's not all the terms that the Course uses and redefines for us,
Mm-hmm.
but it's some of the major themes that the Course uses differently. The words mean different things in the Course than they do in the world. And as you, I think, just mentioned, that it's through contrast. So there's always, Jesus is always comparing the Jesus of the Course, which is really that loving, that symbol of the part of our mind that, the wholeness that we really are, that remains in the mind, and the part of our mind that remembered to laugh at the tiny mad idea of that we could separate. But that that part of our mind is always being contrasted with what we think is our mind, which is a personal self, a brain, which the Course calls the ego. And so we don't really have anything but the ego that's the personal self. There aren't there isn't like parts of the ego that are better than other parts of the ego. The whole ego thought system is a mess from the Course's perspective. There's nothing really, there's nothing, truly kind in the ego thought system, because it sprang from an unkind thought. And it's always defending its belief that it really did separate from God, and that there's there were real consequences of that. And so, we're always trying to kind of get rid of the guilt that we feel unconsciously, get rid of it. We know we feel something very uncomfortable, but we don't know the origin of it. And so our solution to that is to believe that the origin of it is in someone else or in something else, or something that's happening in the world. And what I love about this is, so he's contrasting those two parts of the mind. He's using the term miracle here, but miracle is really just another synonym for forgiveness, which is the work of of choosing again for the part of our mind that, looking at the ego, recognizing my choice for the ego and my reactivity and my anger and my anxiety and my worry and fear, reminding myself that I'm wrong about it, and there's a part of my mind that, the real part of my mind doesn't agree with me and is always at peace. And so the miracle is that change, that willingness to change our mind, and become right-minded, join with Jesus's perspective. But like other places in the Course, he's defining these terms very indirectly. He's telling us what the ego isn't, sort of, because the ego isn't in truth. The ego doesn't really exist. And so we're, to try to define something that doesn't exist gives it a reality that it doesn't have. So, so it's really a beautifully done section. It's also very poetic, which, is I think it's all in blank verse. I was reading, but so what I found, why I was also really drawn to us talking about this, was just we're in such a contentious world, and world here in the United States. In our experience, it seems especially so right now, maybe. But so I think that it's so news seems to be breaking at, warp speed, and it's difficult to process what's happening. It's difficult to know what the truth is. It's difficult not to join I think we all do at times, find ourselves jumping into the ego's, chaos,
Mhm.
and siding with others' egos attacks, or getting on the other side, which is siding with the ego. And so what was refreshing about this is really to be reminded of how I'm giving, the power. I'm giving the ego all the power that it has. Is something that I'm choosing right now. It really doesn't have the power that I'm giving it to take my peace away. My peace, if my peace is as fragile as every fleeting news story, or email I get, or something. I mean, change in a mood of my special relationships, or whatever the seeming cause for me to lose my cool or my peace, um, then then that's a choice that I'm making. That means that I must be afraid. I must be associated with, making the error real. The course says, making the idea that separation is real and needs defense, needs this constant defense real. And so I've just, there's one ego, and we're all, we're all fragments of the one decision making mind. But there really aren't all these egos out there. It's just, it's just the one that I keep choosing. And if I'm, feeling any of those things, then it's my mind in need of healing. That's always what the course's, stance on this is. There's no other egos to correct here. There's only mine,
Well,
and
I'm so glad to hear that, because now I'm off the hook. If it's just your ego that needs fixing,
it's just mine. That's right. You knew
then,
it all the time, right, Bruce?
then then I'm off the hook. Yeah, some
Yeah,
great points that you just shared there, and it's interesting you mentioned that that no comparison among egos. In truth, because there's nothing there, how can you compare nothing to nothing, and have any kind of even really interesting evaluation there, because zero is still zero, no matter
right.
where you look at it from. But as egos, we've taken nothing and made it into a whole lot of something in our minds.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so there seems to be a whole lot of comparative stuff possible. And because our minds are so powerful, like you say, just turn on the news and get the moment to moment blitz of updates of things that seem to be vying for our attention to try to make this crazy dream more and more real. And
Right.
yet there's that in the quiet center in our mind that says, what if this is all made up?
Right. Right.
What if we just, you know what if this is a massive hallucination on an unprecedented scale? Now we obviously need to meet, you know the course meets us where we think we're at, and so it helps us, address all the seeming. I was also picturing, when you talk about, all the fights and everything. I was picturing those kind of cartoon depictions of fights, dog and cat fight kind of
The old cartoons. Yeah.
images, where there's this swirl of dust, and occasionally an arm or a leg or poke through, or a head, with a pained expression or whatever, and or but there's just this maelstrom of stuff,
Turmoil. Yeah.
this turmoil that and yet we willingly jump in. It's sort of like that old phrase, or is this a
Yeah.
private fight, or can anyone join, kind of thing. And
Right.
whenever we choose to get invested in outcomes of
Right.
specific circumstances, we're saying, yeah, I want into that fight, cut me in for a piece of that action, right? But
Right.
just watching that tendency, um, there's that quiet center, that appointed friend that just says, there's a peaceful option here. You might have forgotten
Right.
temporarily.
Right. I mean, we do.
Yeah,
It's not true that we don't have an option.
yeah,
We,
yeah.
you know, we have an option at any given moment, and we already, we chose the option that we're experiencing.
Mhm.
So, but all that not is said, it's not to deny that we're feeling,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
that's not
Yeah, yeah.
helpful at all.
No, no, of course not. Yeah.
that too gives it more power than it
Right,
has.
right. Yeah.
That is saying that it wow, this is, I really need to get rid of this because, this makes me really bad to have these thoughts or to have this. And, that's nonsense too. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so what, it's really just seeing from the course's perspective, it's just really noticing how attracted to this I am and reminding myself, asking for help from the part of my mind to remind me that the devastation I'm seeing and the cause of it is not what I think it is.
Mhm.
And as you were saying, we're making we're making something out of nothing, which is always a repetition of how we made something out of nothing in the very beginning. The seeming beginning, it didn't really go anywhere, but the taking the impossible thought of separation to be true, to be meaningful, have happened, and believing that God noticed it, that's the original mistake. That's what's made a big deal about something that was nothing.
Mhm.
And we keep trying to make something of, when I don't know, when I was a little kid, I remember on the playground, and when we were, I hung around with this big gang of free range children in the woods and stuff that, we all just were, how parents just, you pack a lunch and you were gone for the day. And so, but, I remember all these brawls that kids got into, and the boys especially were always saying, want to make something of it, but that's what we're doing. We're just
Yeah.
children playing these games of making something out of nothing.
Mhm.
And of course, it doesn't feel that way, but when we return to our right mind, that's where the gentle smile comes from. It's a kind of, wow, what was that? What was that dust storm that I just went through over this?
Mhm.
What we put ourselves through is just ridiculous, really. And to see how our moods can be shattered by a news story, or simply somebody looking at me wrong, or cutting me out of something, or perceived slight of any kind. And
Mhm.
so again, our peace is completely unstable and fragile when we're identified as an ego, because we're identified with something that just that is just steeped in guilt. And
Mhm.
there's no way that we can't, that we can ever really find some sort of substitute for what we think we lost within the ego thought system.
Mhm.
We seek and seek, but we never find. We never find that peace. We never find the comfort that we're looking for, and we always feel guilty and bound to be punished at any moment. So,
Not a lot of range of options, even though they seem to be, countless in number in
right.
the ego's dream of differences. But did they all end up in the same? What was that for? And I keep coming back to that phrase that you helped me find useful. Is, how's that working out for you? That inner um, you know, counselor that just keeps asking us for a reality
Right.
check, and which thought system really is truly effective in a very pragmatic way. Yeah.
And I mean, again, to have a healthy respect for this, that this is a journey, and
Hmm.
I do have a lot of fear, and there's times when I don't want to let it go. There's times when I want to be, and that's coming from fear. And so we don't have to beat ourselves up or be critical about it, but we, but geez, how's that working out for you? We could feel better. And when we're ready, maybe when we've had enough suffering, we'll choose again.
I could see piece instead of this, and I'm not upset for the
Yeah,
reason I think. Yeah.
right,
what
right.
concept? What a concept.
There's two. We might repeat that for people. The sort of distilled forgiveness steps that Ken Wapnick was emphasizing it toward the end of his life was um, two steps, and the first is lesson 5. I'm not upset for the reason I think, and the second is lesson 34. I could see peace instead of this, because there's a part of my mind that isn't upset. Is not upset over anything that's not real, and always sees peace, and knows that that everyone is included, still included in God's love, that there was nothing that interrupted that. And these unreal, or these factions that seem so important, these opposing thought systems, the ego's thought system of one or the other, picking up which side are you on and defending it, like, with blind, sometimes violence, and increasingly violence, leads nowhere. I mean, it never did lead anywhere. And it's all happening, whatever side you're on, you're choosing it for the same reason. And how's that working out for you? So we do have another choice. And it's nice to remind ourselves, because, fasten your seatbelts, that, we're in, the world is going to do what the world does, right? But we have a choice of how we can go through it, and which teacher within us we can go through it with, being either the ego, which is teaching us always the thought system of one or the other, and separation realized, and guilt and punishment justified, or the part of our mind that sees that peace is, that everyone is worthy of love, that peace is really a choice that we're making right now, and can always make again, and has never really gone, we have never really left the peace of God in our mind. And we're wrong about that. So
That's a very comforting idea.
it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And wouldn't we like to experience that more often?
Mm-hmm.
I would, I mean, I don't do it all the time, there's no question.
Right, okay.
I mean, we still have, and again, we shouldn't be harsh with ourselves, but the more we can remember that we, in the moment of fury or terror, that we do have a choice, it's going to be a whole different experience.
Yeah. It's kind of like remembering you're a spiritual toddler, and then when you find yourself throwing sand, or getting sand thrown in your face in the sandbox, it's like, oh yeah, I could stand up and walk out of here with the help of my inner kindness teacher, and have a very different experience. Yeah.
Right. And that's an analogy that Ken used too in the sandbox, that if you're going to play in the sandbox, you're going to get sand in your eyes. And you
Uh-huh.
could stand up.
Right. And
Stand up.
another one, oh, go,
Right.
go ahead. I was just going to say, and then another one that he used that I really like is, when you realize you're in the desert, another sandy place, the thing to do is leave.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So the
But
oasis is in our mind.
that shows you that we want to be in the sandbox.
Right. Right.
We completely forget that we can stand up, and we don't really want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a grown-up choice.
And the ego's whole thought system is one of desertification, of turning the oasis that's already there into
Yeah.
a desolate place. But it's
Right.
that the oasis never went away. We just covered it over with a facade of a desert.
Right. And I
Yeah.
mean, that quote from the Course that always kind of cracks me up is, it's what is it? Starved, and about the desert,
A place where starved and thirsty creatures come to die.
creatures come to die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And that just that seems very apt to me. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, we could read from this.
I think that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love
It's really quite
to
lovely.
read this.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Do you want to start?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
So this is number 2 in the Manual for Teachers, The Ego, the Miracle. It starts out, illusions will not last. Their death is sure, and this alone is certain in their world. It is the ego's world because of this. What is the ego? But a dream of what you really are. A thought you are apart from your creator, and a wish to be what he created not. It is a thing of madness, not reality at all. A name for namelessness is all it is, a symbol of impossibility, a choice for options that do not exist. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
We name it, but to help us understand that it is nothing but an ancient thought that what is made has immortality. But what could come of this except a dream, which, like all dreams, can only end in death? Right.
Yeah. Earlier today, I was another course-related conversation. This concept came up, and I was reminded of um, Sancho Panza and Don Quixote and
Right,
and the impossible dream, which is,
right.
it's kind of like we're all on this quest to tilt windmills that don't exist in a dream that we made up. And it's not only is a dream, it's an impossible dream. But because our minds are so powerful, we took what's impossible and convinced ourselves that it was possible. And from that perspective, there seems to be, serious things to be decided, and within the context of where we think we are, we need to kind of, play out that, be normal, as Ken would say, play out those roles. But we could do it with a different teacher, and with an awareness that we can choose the teacher of kindness, the teacher of inclusion, the teacher of forgiveness, and apply that to ourselves and each other, and see where we've been projecting the unconscious unfound guilt, and just say, eh, that's not working for me. And
Mhm.
and
Well,
with
yeah, and
Holy
like,
Spirit's help, we can begin to slowly undo that. Yeah.
right. Well, it is that, that analogy of Don Quixote, that, it is that sort of impossible dream, that hero's journey dream, right?
Hmm.
Which is the classical kind of quest. And the Course says that we believe we're the hero of the dream, we're the center of the dream, we're on this, some sort of mission to for justice, right? For
A
for
mission
somehow
from the
making,
ego's God.
right, and for
Yeah.
making meaning out of some kind of meaning out of the world. And of course that's impossible, and we make that kind of a holy, think of the holy wars, right, that we,
Hmm.
that have been fought over millennia.
Yeah.
So
The
but
crusade.
yeah, it's really just a thought that you are apart, that what is a dream is the thought you are apart from your creator, and a wish, that secret wish, what would it be like to be separate, to be what he created not, right? It's a thing of madness, a symbol of impossibility, a choice for options. That's my favorite part of this paragraph. A choice for options that do not exist.
It's
Well,
a ballot with no boxes to check.
yeah, well, and what does that say about me, right?
Uh-huh.
That's what's so threatening about this is, huh, but I'm part of that option, what I think I am, and that's where the fear arises for us.
Mhm.
But that's why this is the journey home is a journey without distance, but it seems to be a journey for us because, it seems a pretty threatening road that we're on, to go back to the, to lose we have that sense of losing the personal self,
Mhm.
and aren't sure that we're going to gain everything as Jesus promises, right?
Right. And until we start to realize that in each relationship that we give over to the Holy Spirit, we start recognizing and reintegrating that identity with those moments of the miracle, which is what we're also talking about here, which is seeing that we're all in it together, we're all in the same boat.
Right,
We can afford together with, metaphorically, each person in our life seen through the eyes of the Holy Spirit becomes, uh, a symbol of that appointed friend that then guides us back to the shared interest and the shared identity. And that shared identity slowly over time replaces the fraudulent separate identity that we cherish so deeply. But now we're learning the uh, the real alternative is far more fulfilling and not fraught with peril at all, even though the ego
right,
would love to paint it that way.
right. We have those experiences, those shifts,
Hmm.
and we know in those moments outside of time and space, when we are in our right mind, that really is everything we wanted, and that letting go of me is a huge relief. That's really that there's nothing to lose there at all, but everything to gain.
Exactly.
Right. So,
Shall I read
want
the
to go
next
ahead?
one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What is the ego? Nothingness, but in a form that seems like something. In a world of form, the ego cannot be denied, for it alone seems real. Yet could God's Son, as he created him, abide in form or in a world of form? Who asks you to define the ego and explain how it arose can can but be but who he who thinks it real and seeks by definition to ensure that its elusive nature is concealed behind the words that seem to make it so. Well, it's kind of a the ego basically, always defines, it's self-referential. It's defining itself
Right.
by saying, well, I've always existed. And so, I think, therefore I am, with apologies
Right.
to Descartes, but, the thoughts apart from perfect oneness are just the power of our imagination that has gotten derailed by this tiny mad idea that because our minds are so powerful, we're able to create an entire universe that seems to be filled with fragmented things and fragmented identities, and we've glommed onto one of them and identified with one apparent fragment in the infinitely inclusive and infinitely joined aspects that have never been apart, which is kind of bizarre when you think about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really also, I think it's referring to that whole idea of, who asked you to define the ego and explain how it arose can be he, but he who thinks it real. Well, that, I mean, almost all course students ask the question of, well, how could this have happened?
Mm-hmm.
But that's, as Ken was always pointing out, that's framing it in within the ego framework, and it's asking a question that it's really answering itself, as if it really did arise,
Right.
but it didn't. And
It's a statement just masquerading as a question.
right,
Yeah.
as a, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So so again, it's not, who asked to define the ego and explain how it arose is he who thinks it real and seeks by definition to ensure that its elusive nature is concealed behind the words. So it's that it's our unwillingness to to really open to the awareness that we don't know what we are, and that we need help with that. Is I mean, it's so important, really, that humility that we've talked about a lot, is to say, I don't really know. What am I? This is not working out for me, so I need help with this, right?
We sure do. Should I read the next one?
Um,
Oh, more
sure,
thoughts? Yeah.
yeah, you can. You want
Oh,
me to read it, or you want to read it?
oh, go
I
ahead.
think okay. I think you read the last one. So there is no definition for a lie that serves to make it true, nor can there be a truth that lies conceal effectively. The ego's unreality is not denied by words, nor is its meaning clear because its nature seems to have a form, which is the body, right? The personal self. Who can define the undefinable? And yet there is an answer even here. So the ego always thinks too that we can analyze it and talk, if we can somehow make meaning out of the personal self, right? Think of all of the ways that we try to study the personal self and the pathology of the personal self, and the neurologically what's happening in the brain with the personal self, and it's just an endless kind of pursuit of nothing, right? Of making it real and distracting us from where reality lies, and where the choice really lies, where the mind really lies.
Yeah, the lengths that we go to deny our real identity is staggering, but
Right.
we're good at it.
Very
But
good
our
at it.
minds can be trained with practice to unlearn what we've taught ourselves. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Want to read the next one, or?
sure. We cannot really make a definition for what the ego is, but we can say what it is not. And this is shown to us with perfect clarity. It is from this we deduce all that the ego is. Look at its opposite, and you can see the only answer that is meaningful.
And
So you
there's
want
the
to read the
ego.
next one? I think it's just
Yeah.
basically a segue to that. Yeah.
Yeah. The ego's opposite in every way, in origin, effect, and consequence, we call a miracle. And here we find all that is not the ego in this world. We find our sameness, right? We find our shared interests.
Mhm.
Here is the ego's opposite, and here alone we look on what the ego was. For here we see all that it seemed to do, and cause and its effects must still be one. So it's really from, it's when we can um, look at the ego without judgment from our right mind that we can really see the nothingness that it has. If we're looking at the ego with the ego, then it's going to be horrifying, right?
Big
But
dealness, big deals
right,
territory.
yeah,
Yeah.
and really guilt-inducing. But if we look at it from the part of our mind that knows this doesn't really have the power, nothing really has the power to take my peace away, unless I'm in my ego, unless I've chosen the ego thought system. And again, there's really just one ego, it's my decision to join with the ego. Always seems to be someone else's decision. It seems to be an ego attack that's happening in someone else, or a collective someone else. But that's not true.
Yep. It gets back to that first step in forgiveness that you were pointing out, that how Ken represented with workbook lesson 5. I'm not upset for the reason I think, because
Yep.
it's not out there. It's never about anybody else or any group of
Right.
people else, or environmental, or yeah, epidemiological, or how's that for a fancy word?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always my own
none of
mind.
those conditions really are the cause of my peace or lack thereof. It's always a decision in the mind, but that's the last thing ego wants to hear.
Yep.
So it always keeps that outer shield of oblivion intact in order to avoid having to confront the inner shield, which is, well, maybe it didn't happen in my mind either. Maybe that was all made up.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yep, yep. That it's not what we think it is.
yeah.
You want to go read the next one, or did I read that all
I
the
think
whole time?
I think you read 5, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I guess I didn't read all of 5, did I?
No, I
Or
don't. Maybe you didn't. Yeah. Make sure you read that again.
sorry, it looked like it was a paragraph there to me,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
where there was darkness, now we see the light. What is the ego? What the darkness was. Where is the ego? Where the darkness was. What is it now, and where can it be found? Nothing and nowhere. Now the light has come. Its opposite has gone without a trace. Where evil was, there now is holiness. What is the ego? What the evil was. Where is the ego? In an evil dream that but seemed real while you were dreaming it. Where there was crucifixion stands God's Son. What is the ego? Who has need to ask? Where is the ego? Who has need to seek for an illusion now that dreams are gone? And that's very similar to other to, I think, what is the miracle in the what it says portion of the workbook. Or no, I'm sorry, it's what is the ego in the workbook, where it talks about where is the ego, nowhere. What is the ego? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we've given the ego, the personal self, all the meaning that it has for us, but it's still nothing. It's still just a dream, right? There is no, it's outside of time and space, because everything is outside of time and space in the mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And who has
Yeah.
need to seek for an illusion, And well, that would be the part of my mind that's choosing to be an ego.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, desperately trying to find an identity where one can't be found, where
Right.
there's no check boxes. It's like, wait, where did it
Right.
go?
And to prove I really exist at God's expense, but
Mhm.
it's not my fault. It's the fault of another ego, that's worse than I am. That's more evil than I am.
Right. As long as the projection machine is running, then we don't have to just notice that we're in a theater.
It's completely mindless, right? I mean,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
it seems to keep us mindless, but that's because we're denying the power of the mind to choose again.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't we're all of our attention is directed at the dream, at the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just completely ignoring the fact that we're projecting it.
Do you just a quick aside, but I think it's pertinent. Do you ever recall seeing the original Apple computer, the Macintosh computer ads that ran on TV, where it was sort of this Orwellian 1984 kind of scenario with this droning voice on a big screen and all these sort of zombie-like automatons in this huge auditorium where we're seated, and then there's this lone figure that comes hurling a giant hammer and comes barreling through the aisle and then smashes the screen, and then everyone is kind of like, whoa, what happened, kind of thing. But I think that's sort of like when we have those moments of recognition that we made this whole thing up. We occasionally have those little breakthrough moments where we realize, wow, this is
Yeah,
a massive hallucinatory holographic movie of cosmic proportions, but those proportions in truth are nothing. But
right,
because our minds are so powerful, we can conceive of an identity that's separate from other identities. We can conceive of an entire cosmology of worlds and planets and things that have these seemingly autonomous existences and do all on these adventures and misadventures, and it all seems so real. But what if it's like a giant Matrix movie that
right.
we just have forgotten that we wrote, produced, directed, and screenwriter. We played all the choreography, set design. We did all those roles in our mind, and what a production! But eventually, Holy Spirit says, "Blink!"
Yeah,
A little
yeah.
flick on the screen, and the whole thing comes down. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a sound stage.
Right, right. And
Giant, yeah.
I think that well, things have the dream does seem extremely surreal right now,
Oh, for
and,
sure, for
and
sure.
so I think that those ideas might be a little more accessible. But I also think that we I think that the emphasis that the course puts on special relationships are kind of long-term relationships that we're really practicing forgiveness in,
Mm-hmm.
and we see how we have times where we have real moments of healing and forgiveness in our mind about someone, and let it
Mm-hmm.
go and see our sameness. I mean, not let it go, but it dissolves, and because we are in our right mind, and then how we keep going back, and there's a familiarity that we develop after a while of seeing, wow, I keep putting this costume on, they keep putting this, and there is something that you do have glimpses, I think, now and then of we're playing roles here,
Yeah, yeah.
and they get tiring. And do I want to keep? I don't have to keep playing this role. You don't have, it's. I mean, it's not something that's spoken really, but we could put these down. We don't have to keep playing our roles in the same dance of guilt that we keep doing.
The sharp-edged toys in the
Yeah,
sandbox.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mixing metaphors a little. Yeah.
So
And number
you
7.
want to read that? Yeah.
Sure. What is a miracle? A dream as well, but look at all the aspects of this dream and you will never question anymore. Look at the kindly world you see extend before you as you walk in gentleness. Look at the helpers all along the way you travel, happy in the certainty of heaven and the surety of peace. Look an instant too on what you left behind at last and finally pass by. And here it would uh, seem that he's addressing, seeing through our projections with Holy Spirit's help to the real identity that we all share, the sameness and the fact that we're all in the same boat together. We're all, working on the same forgiveness classroom, perhaps in different ways and different forms, but the content in the mind is all the same. And with that idea of compassion and shared interests, it becomes a kindlier world, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, our experience is different. The
Mm-hmm.
world can
Mm-hmm.
still do what it's doing, but we
Right.
don't have, I mean, really, again, it doesn't have to have any effect on our peace. And we can see only, we can be only empathetic, only compassionate, knowing that everybody is fighting that same hard battle of trying to prove they exist apart from God, but it's not their fault,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's a losing battle because I mean, there's no real battle actually going on at all, but you can't prove something that's impossible, that never happened. And so we can't, and the idea of death, which we believe ends the battle finally, that we're always in fear of, is no release either, So, but there is a release. There's another release, and we're all trying to find that because it's the only one, and it's for everyone, and everybody's welcome. So it just changes the whole experience, right? The kindness becomes, genuine, because I know how hurtful it is when I choose the ego, and so I see, I'm always only answering my own call for love.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the pure non-duality of the course seems like an abstraction at first, and we get it intellectually, and then after we realize that, oh, if I'm projecting my grievances on someone else, I'm not at peace, and neither is there a doorway for the alleged others to be at peace too. And
Right.
we realize that, the only way out of it is a completely compassionate perspective where we stop condemning, um, and that would include ourselves in that condemnation. And then, instead of the building being condemned, we use Holy Spirit's remodeling service to transform it into a very welcoming home that has room for everyone in it, metaphorically.
Right. Right. Yep. Okay. So, paragraph 8, this was the ego, all the cruel hate, need for vengeance, and the cries of pain, the fear of dying and the urge to kill, the brotherless illusion and the self that seemed alone in all the universe. And that's that terrible isolation that we feel that lesson 182 talks about, where we all feel like this frightened child that, has
Mhm.
got himself cast out of heaven, right?
Yeah.
For his naughtiness. This terrible mistake about yourself, the miracle corrects as gently as a loving mother sings her child to rest. Is not a song like this what you would hear? Would it not answer all you thought to ask and even make the question meaningless?
Yeah. In stark contrast to, the the Zen koans that would make you more confused, this one is not only providing clarity but a deep sense of comfort in recognition of the fact that, not only are we all working on the same shared interest, but that destination is one of comfort and peace and innocence and a joyousness that we can't even fathom, but we're drawn to it because we know that's our real identity on some level
Yeah.
or another. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Shall I read number 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Your questions have no answer being made to still God's voice, which asks of everyone one question only. Quote, are you ready yet to help me save the world? Unquote. Ask this instead of what the ego is, and you will see a sudden brightness cover up the world the ego made. No miracle is now withheld from anyone. The world is saved from what you thought it was. And what it is wholly uncondemned and wholly pure. Whenever I see the word purity now, I think in terms of, okay, there's the two thought systems again. And any word or any concept or idea can be translated by the Holy Spirit into something that's helpful, or misinterpreted by the ego into something that, further obfuscates the truth. So purity is one of those ones that I find helpful to think in terms of. In the Holy Spirit's interpretation, there's just one thing. We're all it. That's the purity of the Holy Spirit's thought system. The ego's thought system is purity is something is pure if it doesn't include something else. Well, there has to be an other, an
Right.
observer and observed for there to be an impurity. And the ego's definition of pure is only in relation to the opposite of impure. So anyway, again, it's another thing to just kind of notice when we're trying to create purity out of impurity with the ego's, backwards thinking, or if we're just accepting the purity that we all intrinsically have and are.
Right.
From
Another way
Holy
to think
Spirit.
about it probably is just, that our mind is split, and have over the belief in separation. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as long as we're split minded, it's filled with all this crap and conflict, and so the right mind, the part of our mind that remembered the wholeness, Jesus, Holy Spirit, is is not is not split, is whole,
Hmm.
and so has no opposing unkind, unpure thoughts, right?
Hmm.
Impure thoughts.
Hmm.
But also when he's talking about the changing of the world, I think we always have to point out that it's not about, it's healing my mind about the world is how I save the world from the course's perspective. It's not ever about trying on any level to change something unreal, or to fix something that's not really broken. Um, so it's not, it's choosing to change my mind about the world.
Such an important point. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get diverted into thinking, oh, I just have to change this effect or this
Right.
appearance. Yeah.
And we can't, again, when we're talking about the ego, we can't make a better ego. The ego is, I mean, despite the fact that there's, a gazillion dollar industry devoted to that very thing in all different aspects of,
Hmm.
improving the ego, improving the self, bettering ourselves, all of the disciplines that try to make a better ego, basically.
Right.
Um,
Body and personality remodeling,
yeah,
Inc. Yeah.
yeah, and all the self-help books, and
Right. Right.
that's not what, I mean. There's nothing wrong with that as
Right. Right.
magic, but
Right.
it's not going to ever get to the root of the issue.
Hmm.
And so, it isn't, the course isn't against us, if we're so moved supporting causes, or even demonstrating or doing whatever feels right, or donating to causes. But and certainly, vote. I mean, it's not, it's, we have to, as long as we seem to be in the stream, it would be silly not to do something that reflects the right minded choice.
Hmm.
But as long as it's trying not to do it with malice, not to
Exactly.
do it with with the understanding that it's just an opinion. It's
Hmm.
just, this is not my salvation. It's not the peace of God that I'm dealing with here, you know
Yep.
and we have to remember that. So, but certainly not to deny our experience. I think, Ken
Exactly.
always said, do normal things. Don't
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
yeah,
And don't fight yourself, basically.
don't fight yourself.
That's always a clue. If there's
Right.
a conflict, it's like, okay, guess which teacher I've been listening to then. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, as long as we're in bodies, we're going to have preferences, and that's okay. There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that, and differences of opinion.
Hmm.
But when we're condemning the other side to not being worthy of love, basically, or redemption, then there's something wrong with that picture. We've got to be also condemning ourselves, and it won't work. It won't bring us peace. No matter what how things go. So
The other side is just a an idea created by a polarized mind. Yeah.
outward picture of an inward condition, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So of the split mind. And so there will always be factions in as long as we're dreaming, but it's beginning to, we have to see that we're really coming from that same, what's causing those opinions is coming from the same problem.
Hmm.
So
Want to finish
uh,
the last paragraph?
sure. The miracle forgives, the ego damns. Neither need be defined except by this. Yet could a definition be more sure or more in line with what salvation is? Problem and answer lie together here, and having met at last, the choice is clear. Who chooses hell when it is recognized? And that's such a great line. And who would not go on a little while when it is given him to understand the way is short and heaven is his goal? So, to, I guess, Jesus entreating us to be patient, I mean, the kind use of time, as the workbook says, is forgiveness. And so that's, practicing this will bring me everything I want. That's the title of one of the lessons: forgiveness offers everything I want.
Also, there's a really cool book by that with that same title too.
There is.
And you can find Susan's books
That's
on her
true. It wasn't
website.
plugging my book. I just really
How's that for a good segue? Yeah,
yeah.
forageinforgiveness.com. Yeah, yeah, I highly recommend all the Susan's books. So
Thank you.
very good reads
So
and a lot of fun. Yeah, you put a lot of humor in your stories that you share your personal journey as well as in each little chapter lead inexorably to course principles that really are helpful. And I think that's what we all need to do, is just take each little vignette of our daytime dramas in our mind, and just keep asking Holy Spirit, asking your inner kindness teacher, say,
Right.
okay, show me the meaning behind this facade.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let me see this
Take me from the
differently.
ego to the miracle. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, again, to feel what you're feeling. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
the course
Yeah.
says sometimes we come in tears, sometimes we
Right.
come in fury, sometimes
Right.
it's okay. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's not sinful to have an ego, it's just
No.
mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's just an error, a correctable
yeah,
error. Yeah.
yeah. So with that thought, we can choose. Remember that when we get off this talk, and it doesn't take very long again these days to have something that seems to jolt the foundation of what you collectively thought was going on, and but we're a lot stronger than that.
It's just an accelerated classroom, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can be if we put it to, it's all about purpose, right?
Right.
With
Right.
purpose, do I want to use it to root myself more deeply in the ego thought system, or to take another step toward healing my mind and
Hmm.
experiencing the miracle of that change?
And each step is heavily reinforced if we want to
Completely reinforced.
follow our appointed friend's guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot fail.
Yep.
So
Well, thank you, Susan. I always enjoy the conversations, and they're
thank
always
you.
everything you share is such great reminders, you know, encouragement to press on with the the mindfulness, and gently, you know,
Well, you too. Yeah.
noticing when I'm not at peace, and using that correction
Yeah, doing
capability in
putting it
there.
to better use than we usually put it to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Put it to a healing purpose. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
So, all right. Well, thank you.
Likewise, looking forward to the next conversation.
Me too.
Alrighty, bye for now.
Bye.